What's going on, family? Welcome to the Veal show. And today's episode is entitled Bi-Directional Violence is Gender Equality. So today's episode was inspired by a recent situation that happened in the news out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was an incident where a black woman got into an altercation with an Asian male business owner out there. He owns some type of hair store, a hair salon or something of that nature out there. And they got into the altercation, and what it appeared like to me was that the woman slapped him or hit him in the face, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and he ended up punching her in the mouth, causing her mouth to bleed in front of her kids. Prior to the physical situation, they had a pretty heated back and forth between the two, up in each other's faces and what have you, etc., etc. And so, let's get into it, family. In that particular situation, right, I don't think the man was necessarily at fault. I think it was a retaliatory strike, because it wasn't like the man kept going toward her, or that he kept hitting her or anything like that. He hit her one time and pretty much fell back. You know what I'm saying? And that leads to the title of today's episode, which is Bi-Directional Violence is Gender Equality. So first point, let's define bi-directional violence, right? So as opposed to unidirectional violence is a situation where one person enacts violence on another person. He initiates it, and they pretty much don't retaliate. And bi-directional violence is a situation where one person enacts violence on another person, that other person also enacts violence upon that first person, right? They're enacting violence on each other. And so unidirectional violence would be something like domestic abuse or abuse, some type of physical abuse of any kind, where bi-directional violence could be some type of domestic violence or what have you. And so that's the first piece. Bi-directional violence is something that happens even in the case of defending yourself, fighting out of self-defense. And it actually happens in the black community. You have a lot of bi-directional violence between black men and black women in our community. If you look at the intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide statistics, if you do your research, you'll see that the violence where black men are perpetrators of violence against black women and black women are perpetrators of violence against black men are at a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So I'm not an advocate for domestic abuse or abuse of any kind, where it's just a man or a woman, fighting on another person without any type of retaliation. I would never recommend, or I just don't deal with that at all. Like, I don't respect that. I don't tolerate it, etc., etc., right? But when it comes to bi-directional violence, it is what it is on that point. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking about gender equality, that's a part of equality. Like, if you're a woman and you're trying to fight a man, somebody that's obviously biologically stronger than you, then at the end of the day, whatever happens as far as retaliation, it just is what it is. And it's very interesting that women talk about equality and stuff like that, but when it comes to things like this, It's interesting that a lot of women talking about gender equality and equal rights for women, but a lot of times there's no talk about these type of things when it's things that doesn't benefit them, right? And it's an interesting contradiction that we have a culture that treats women as victims and men as victimizers, and we have people that are teaching boys, not to hit back when it comes to women, right? So it's a lot of contradictory mentalities. Like, even when you look at the Dora Milaje and the Black Panther movie that came out, the Marvel Black Panther movie directed by Ryan Coogler, which is a very good movie. You had a lot of women, cheering on the female soldiers, the Dora Milaje, talk about how they kick butt and etc., but at the same time, you had a lot of women talking about that the character Killmonger, what's his name, Michael B. Jordan's character, how he was misogynistic and abusive to women, right? And it's just, it's contradictory, because at the end of the day, so let's say this, right? Historically, the Dora Milaje are modeled after female African warriors in antiquity, right? Such as the female bodyguards that were had up by a lot of the African rulers, like Gaddafi out in Libya, and even before Gaddafi, you had a lot of female warriors in antiquity. You know what I'm saying? One of the real life female warriors, or groups of warriors they had, were the Dahomey Amazons. And the Dahomey Amazons were a fine all-female military regiment of the Kingdom of Dahomey in what would be present-day Republic of Benin. And so this is actually not only are the Dora Milaje from Black Panther modeled after these African female warriors, but also the mythical Amazons that are, used in mythology and a lot of superhero movies and stuff like that, And I believe that these women were numbered anywhere from 10,000 to 6,000 initially, and they had even larger. The regiment got even larger later day, right? And so the question is, do you think that when the Kingdom of Dahomey went to war with other kingdoms, that the male warriors of these other kingdoms, just turned the other cheek, or knocked them over the head and took their weapon and let them live because they were female warriors? Hell no. They were killed the same way they would a male warrior. Same with the Black Panther movie. Just like those damn Dora Milaje were killing the enemies of Black Panther in the movie, the enemies killed one of them. Killmonger killed one of the Dora Milaje and fought them just like they were any other warriors. You understand? Because if you think about it, in ancient Africa, there was always a sense of equality amongst men and women in those cultures. They respected women and they treated women as equals, in contrast where in a lot of Western Eurocentric societies, women are treated as less than and almost like a child, they're giving, how can I put this, they're kind of giving more leniency than men are, you know. And so that's not a true mark of equality. When you're saying if a woman kills a person in cold blood and a man kills a woman in cold blood, and a woman gets a lesser sentence, because if you research these things, a lot of times it's very rare for a female murderess in Western societies to get the death penalty. Whereas if you have a man that commits the exact same crime to the exact same level of brutality, those men will be on death row like easy. And that is just the mark. That's the mark of a Eurocentric society. They believe that women are less than, and just like you would a kid who you believe is less than, you would give leniency and, you know, not be as harsh with them as you would a man. It's the same type of ideology. So, you know, that's how it was historically. There was no difference in how you dealt with a woman and a man in terms of consequences, repercussions, punishment, etc., in those societies that were pretty much equal in terms of how the societies view these women. And so let me reiterate that, you know, I don't condone or suggest any type of abuse of women or any other genders for that matter. But when it comes down to bidirectional violence and self-defense, at the end of the day, you know, I'm definitely for men using self-defense against women that attempt to harm them. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're all human, and I've seen, at the end of the day, we're all human, and I've seen over the years how not standing up for yourself and allowing someone to abuse you results in an escalation of the abuse. You understand? Like, there's a brother by the name of Tariq Nasheed who did the Hidden Color series, Black History, African History series. He also has some relationship books, and in one of his books called The Elite Way by Tariq Nasheed, he breaks down the 7 levels of disrespect. And so I really haven't read the book in several years. Like, I probably bought it when I was in high school, and he kind of breaks down basically how women will start off verbally abusing you, and if you allow that disrespect to continue, it will basically move up eventually until you get to the point where a woman will physically put her hands on you. I think it's verbal abuse in private, then verbal abuse in public, then verbal abuse behind your back. And I can't remember the actual 7 steps, but it goes basically into the point where I think the 7th level of disrespect is when a woman is plotting on basically killing you. Basically, it gets to that level. And you know, when I was young, I wasn't necessarily sure what to make of it, but I've seen some videos on Facebook where they have these cats that ain't got stabbed up by the damn crazy woman with like real thick gashes in their face, where a woman look like she sliced them open with a razor, and they up here crying and bleeding, talking about, you know, I ain't gonna never put my hands on no woman, yada yada yada. And you know, suffering real abuse. And that's just how hard and how imprinted the ideologies that, I don't know who told them these things. You know, I'm guessing they probably were raised by single mothers who taught them these things and what have you. But you know, that leads to another point. Where do we as men and black women get the ideas that, you know, it's never okay to put your hand on a woman physically as a man because we're stronger? Where do these ideas come from? Where do these ideologies come from? You understand? Because it's at the end of the day, I mean, whatever your ideology is in terms of things like this, it is what it is. You know, like my ideology is everyone keep their hands to themselves, and we don't have any problem. I've personally never been an initiator of violence unless someone attacked me or did me or my family wrong in terms of behavior. You understand? But at the end of the day, if a woman tries to attack me, I will defend myself. Just as I would as a man tries to attack me. And I've never been scared of another human being ever in my life. Well, I take that back. The last time I was scared of another human being, I was in the 3rd grade. I was afraid of this cat that used to bully every damn body in the school. And one day I stopped being afraid. He told me to do something. Like I think he wanted me to give him some money, some lunch money or some shit like that. And I was like, no, we just got into a fight. And you know, we got into a little fight. I had a big ass knot on my head, but I tell you one thing, I wasn't scared after that day. And I would never let nobody bully me or harm me without repercussions from that point forward. And that's how I move today. But back to the point, you know, we have to question our beliefs, our belief systems, and our ideologies, our mindsets. We really have to question who the hell taught us as men and women that it's okay for a woman to harm a man physically, and that a man under no circumstances should defend himself against a woman, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, let's keep it 100. There are many situations in which a man, like just outside of defending yourself as a man, like if you're in a situation where a woman is molesting one of your children, is it not okay then to put hands on a woman? If a woman is trying to gravely harm your wife or your children, is it not okay then to put hands on a woman? If you and your woman are out, if y'all are out and several women try to jump her, is it then not okay for you to put hands on a woman? Like, are you gonna let your old lady get her ass whooped by 5-10 different women? If you're an army combatant, if you're a soldier in a war, and a lot of people don't know this, but there are several countries that have female soldiers, and Israel being a country that has mandatory service sign up for men and women. If you're faced on the battlefield against a female soldier, then what? You understand? So of course there's always exceptions to the rules, even to the most extreme person, right? There's always situations and stuff that me and you may have to break those rules, even if you're an extremist person that does believe that under no circumstances at all should a man put his hands on a woman, or what have you. Right? So I'm pretty much a fan of everyone just keeping their damn hands to themselves, and you know, it won't be any issues. Now let's look at this thing from a historical perspective, right? Like if you look at the domestic violence and intimate partner violence rates in America now, they're probably most likely the lowest they've been in the history of our country. Like for sure, they're definitely way down from where they were from, I want to say, like the 70s to 90s, right? And so a lot of people call the current generation, like the millennial generation, soft, but you know, we're way less violent than previous generations. Even the murder rates in the inner cities are down in comparison. The child pregnancy rate are down from the 90s. And of course, domestic violence and intimate partner homicide are all down from those previous years, right? But what's that saying is, obviously during those previous years, the men didn't have that same mentality about, you know, it's never okay to put your hands on a woman. I mean, even I remember reading Dick Gregory's biography, Nigger, I think it's called, and there's a scene in his book where his dad stumps out a woman that he's dating for talking bad about their mom. Like the dad's cheating on their mom with her, and he stumps her out, and the kids are cheering this shit on. Now listen, I'm not condoning anything like this. I think that's probably a little bit too far, but I'm just using that as an example to show you, like, obviously the men back in those days didn't have that same mindset. And then let's even talk about the facade of the gentleman that the white community puts out there, right? Like when you think about gentlemen, you normally probably think about the 1950s and 60s. But the real deal is there was a lot of domestic violence in the white community behind closed doors. And it's funny because so many women today talk about, oh, the men back in the day and grandpa knew how to build a house, yada yada yada, etc., etc., etc. And that's cool to try to romanticize that, but if you want to be real, most men that came of age and that were working fathers in the 1950s and 60s slapped the hell out of a woman for disrespect, verbal disrespect, let alone, you know, a woman trying to be physical with them in a heartbeat. Like, let's keep that 100. Like, I know old school players, I know old school men, and I had two grandfathers myself, which I didn't know them super well in terms of things like this, because, you know, from what I seen with my grandmothers, you know what I mean, they were never disrespectful. They were nowhere near the level of disrespect that a lot of women are today, in terms of walking up to a man, talking crap to a man, calling a man derogatory terms, being loud with a man. I've never seen any of that from my grandmothers, you know what I mean? Which one of my grandmothers died when I was 4 and the other died when I was 8. But I've never seen that type of behavior with any men, let alone my grandfathers, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, but, you know, I have old school players that's now, you know, in their 60s and 70s that kind of put me on game when I was younger. You know, different pimps and players in the game, real cool masculine men that I know, you know, if a woman got out of line, you know, it would be some trouble, you know what I mean? And I'm not condoning what these men did or what have you, but I'm just talking about the reality of how older men behaved in those past generations. You understand? And that's just the reality of it. That's just the reality. And so, you know, this is a situation that we're in. We have to challenge and really critically think about where are all these mindsets and ideologies coming from. Just like on one hand, women will praise and romanticize about these older men from back in the day and how masculine those men were, but they will, conveniently leave out the parts that they find bad, such as these men not being nowhere near as tolerant for the levels of disrespect that men today are with women. And these men being willing to get physical with women, whether it be a slap or a choke or what have you. Like, they don't mention that part about these old school cats. You know what I mean? And there's even precedent in, religious books like the Quran that speaks on, hitting women as a form of discipline, correction, and what have you. You know what I'm saying? And, like me, I'm the type of guy, I like to use my words at the end of the day. There's really only, I could probably count on one hand the times I've had to be physical with women. And I will say about myself, as a kid, I can't remember exactly why, but there was a certain point as a kid that I just felt like hitting women was wrong. I don't know why. Like, probably I was told to it by teachers, women teachers, or what have you, but I can't exactly pinpoint where that came from. And I actually had several situations through elementary school where not women, but girls my age would, hit on me, and I wouldn't do anything about it. I'll just take it, punch it on me, twist my hand and stuff like that, and I wouldn't even do anything about it but tell a teacher. And a lot of times, they got a slap on the wrist or nothing at all happened. And I remember one time in elementary school, this was like, I think it was like a friend or a cousin that hit me or something like that. And I told like one of my older cousins, I was probably, maybe in their late teens, early 20s. And, they accused me of being a telltale. So they told me if somebody hit you, hit you back. You know what I mean? And so that's very interesting. Now, as far as the other two times where I did get physical with women were in high school. It was two separate situations. It was with two white chicks, matter of fact. The first incident, I don't know why the hell this white chick did this. Like, I don't even know what happened. Like, I really don't understand why exactly she did this, but the chick gave me a nice little two-piece, like really punched me twice, boop, boop, which, looking back, the punches were not very painful for me, but she was serious. Like, you can see on her face, she was serious or mad or something. And she bit me on her arm. And so I actually choked her up and slapped her in her face. And she ended up started crying. And when I say choked her up, I don't mean like I was trying to choke her, suffocate or anything, but I just like grabbed her by the neck and like slapped her. And she broke down crying. And with that situation, her boyfriend didn't do anything about it. I think she was dating this white or Puerto Rican dude. The second situation, it was this Irish white chick, like red hair. I can't remember the chick's name, but she had pushed me and like tried to kick me in a groin area, but I hurry up and moved my knee to the side so she couldn't get me, and so I pushed her back. And when I pushed her, she bumped her head on the wall. And so with that situation, she had this tall ass boyfriend, tall ass white dude that was like an ROTC or something like that. And so I told him the situation would happen, and we were supposed to, fight or something like that. But when they got down to fighting, he ended up just breaking up with the chick and was like, we don't have no problems or nothing like that. And so that was really in my head. I think that was the only, I'm pretty sure that was the only times I've gotten physical with women. And I was like 16, 15 at the time that all this went down, high school days. And I tell you what, I didn't have any problems out of those chicks after that, after those incidents. And that's really, to be honest with you, there's every incident that I've ever gotten into, whenever I got into a physical altercation with somebody, I never had any problems after that. There's only two people that I had reoccurring issues with. One is my cousin. When we were kids, we used to get into fights all the time. And another is this cat that I went to school with. I can't even remember this cat's name, but we used to fight all the time in damn elementary school. And then after elementary school, I went to middle school for 1 year. In my second year of middle school, this motherfucker came to the middle school, and we ended up getting into some damn shit. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I've never been the one to discriminate in terms of defending myself at the end of the day. You understand? And even with that, with defending myself, I've never been like, I fought dudes. Like, if you don't know me, by the way, I'm about 5'7", probably about 165, 170. You know what I mean? And when I was younger, I was even shorter and even smaller. You know what I'm saying? I might have been like 5'6", maybe 130 pounds, something like that. And shit, I used to get into fights with dudes. Like, they had this one cat in middle school. We got into a fight. This cat was like, I promise you, this cat was like at least 6'1", probably 200 something pounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've never discriminated or been afraid of anyone, regardless of size or nothing like that, etc., etc. It was what it was. I never started no shit with nobody, but I damn sure finished it at the end of the day. And I do say that, put that disclaimer out there again. The way I deal with women now is verbally. You know what I mean? I would definitely defend myself still, but it's never gotten to that point. Like, usually I'm able to talk to a woman, and I just haven't had any. The women I come across and that I deal with, I don't have those issues of disrespect. You understand? Like, a lot of times that disrespect issue comes along with dealing with hood rats. You know what I mean? And a lot of times these hood rat chicks, they're hurting, and they have a masculine persona, if you will. They're very masculinized, and so they behave and respond like men would in terms of the physical, but they don't have the same physical of that man to back it up. You know what I mean? One thing I noticed with being older is that, most men that aren't like super hood niggas, you know what I'm saying, are reluctant to get into fights. And I think that on a subconscious level, we know as men that anything could go down within a fight. That shit can turn deadly real quick. Somebody get mad, have a gun, have a knife, or whatever, or what have you. You know what I mean? Unless you're defending yourself or your family, your girl or something like that. You know what I mean? Which, you're definitely proud to do. Unless it's one of those situations, a lot of times it really don't get that far. You know what I'm saying? But that's the deal. So, everybody keep their hands to themselves. No issues will be had. That's my advice. When I have kids, I'm going to teach my kids, to defend yourself at all times, no matter the sex, at the end of the day. Of course, I would tell, my daughters to not provoke any young men or to put hands on them. Or none of my kids, really. I don't want them to initiate any physical action against anybody else unless it's warranted. It's funny now that I'm thinking about it. My mom talks about constantly how she used to fight boys when she was younger, which I don't know what age she's talking about. I'm thinking she talking about probably elementary school and middle school, somewhere around that age range. She's from the lower ninth ward and the sixth ward, so that's what she talks about every now and then. How she used to do that. So, and even I even have maybe one or two cousins that low-key brag about how they fight niggas too, how they used to fight niggas, because they're a little bit older now. But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie, that's like the two ratchet ass cousins that grew up in like a single parent household basically, and so you understand where that dysfunction comes in at. It's my cousins, I love them, but hey, call a spade a spade. It is what it is. You understand? So yeah, I think that's about it for today's show. Bi-directional violence is gender equality. Make sure y'all safe out here. Ladies and men, keep your hands to yourself unless you can face whatever repercussion may come your way. You understand? And hey, thank y'all for listening. Hope y'all enjoyed today's show. I'm going to teach my kids, to defend yourself at all times, no matter the sex, at the end of the day. Of course, I would tell, my daughters to not provoke any young men or to put hands on them. Or none of my kids, really. I don't want them to initiate any physical action against anybody else unless it's warranted. It's funny now that I'm thinking about it. My mom talks about constantly how she used to fight boys when she was younger, which I don't know what age she's talking about. I'm thinking she talking about probably elementary school and middle school, somewhere around that age range. She's from the lower ninth ward and the sixth ward, so that's what she talks about every now and then. How she used to do that. So, and even I even have maybe one or two cousins that low-key brag about how they fight niggas too, how they used to fight niggas, because they're a little bit older now. But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie, that's like the two ratchet ass cousins that grew up in like a single parent household basically, and so you understand where that dysfunction comes in at. It's my cousins, I love them, but hey, call a spade a spade. It is what it is. You understand? So yeah, I think that's about it for today's show. Bi-directional violence is gender equality. Make sure y'all safe out here. Ladies and men, keep your hands to yourself unless you can face whatever repercussion may come your way. You understand? And hey, thank y'all for listening. Hope y'all enjoyed today's show.